Greetings, Marsh here, and welcome to episode 234 of my modded Factorio playthrough. In this episode, we are going to test our new setup on Bobmodium, and then start expanding it to the other ores. Enjoy. Of course, they need their modules, which is 2 speeds. And an efficiency. But that's filling it up to about 1,000. And the rate is at 120 a second. It seemed like it was going a little slow. Let's just set this to 10,000 to start, because I want to performance test them here. Because they should be maxing out all these belts. But they're not. Just the crushed stone, I guess. And that one doesn't have its modules. That would explain it. So it's 2 and 1. Using up that acid and filling up the slag slurry. Still seems like they're just not fast enough, though. Because one of these can do, I guess, 18 per second. Yeah, I guess the inserters are just slightly too slow. But what kind of output? 9 per second, and the inserter can not really do it. Seems like a limiting factor is the input. I mean, they're all kind of pretty close, but let's just try to put an extra inserter on each one of these and see what it does. That's the easy side anyway. Unfortunately, it multiplies resources on the way out, so this only works so well. And we're basically already at 10,000 because this produces ore so quickly. I don't know, it's sure going a lot harder than it did before. And this is certainly taking care of the slag slurry. Okay, we'll have to check it in the future. It's kind of worrisome that we can't fully check it right now, because we have other things we need to check. Namely the chunks and the crystals. Well, it's certainly making lots of resources very quickly. And that's certainly handling them. Okay. And finally, well, it's making a lot of them. Probably using up the acid, but it's more or less holding out, I think. And because of the huge buffer that's in there, we won't really be able to test this anymore. I mean, we have 8 machines, but we only need 6.67, so this is the minimum number of inserters. So that implies to me we just need barely more than 1 as an input and an output. But we'll have to see. It could just be a belt thing. Plus, that will only slow down if basically every single line is running, so it might have to... this might have to wait until the factory's actually using all these resources before we can really test it and see how well it's working. But let's see here. We have an acceptable amount of purified water in each side. They pressurized them. And it looks like it processed all the sulfuric wastewater, because it essentially had the room for it. So I think we're doing pretty good. Now, if we grab all this stuff, we can just toss it in our inventory. course, I don't want it to go there. Why does it do that? There's other locations right here. Stop choosing the easy one. But I guess that explains what they're doing. They're just choosing the easy one. Because put it in there. Thank you. Of course, what are the robots going up there for? They're just choosing different places to go, I guess. Could be a lack of space. But still. Oh well. It'll eventually get sent to the right position when the warehouse gets removed. Let's see, I think we did have some wires we needed to connect across these real quick. Well, I guess it doesn't matter, because these combinators were in there, but we only need one set of them. And then I believe we've done everything we need to do the next setup here. So it's time to start pulling stuff out. And probably enable this again so the resources get put in there, and the robots are probably going to take stuff to the wrong spot. So let's pick everything up to probably about here. Let's see what it does. Aren't bots great? Probably need even more parking spaces than this. And we need to make a nice copy of this. Well, it will help keep it lined up perfectly if we include the tracks. So we grab essentially all of this. So when we place it, if we line it up with the track, like this, it should basically fit. Although I'm kind of sad because it's not. It looks like there was a miscalculation in there. Although it's right on the money though, as far as fitting. It's just this one line here. Because there we go, it does fit. But oh so barely. Well, hooray for empty spaces. There we go. Let's help the robots a little bit. And give them connection to the network. There we go, that should help. Well, I guess we could have made it fit by pushing these machines down a little bit, but I don't see the need for that. At least right now, since everything technically fits. And we'll need to move these belts around as appropriate. Gotta make sure all these pipes are hooked up. Still a little incomplete to be checking, but I think it is. We gotta adjust these belts. For the new position. Let's see, the robots are just about finished. I think they're just bringing in the modules now. We've got to get all the pipes hooked up. First one's for the crystal slurry, the second one is for the mineral, and then this one is for the acid, which we know we need. Now we got to get all these configured. So switched over to rubite. But now that we have this combinator, we can just set this to crush rubite. Everything changes. So that was easy. Set these for rubite chunks. And the combinators. This one is rubite chunk. And also it's the cyan geode. Right there. So those are all changed. And then this one needs to be the cyangia, but I see it doesn't have modules, but I guess they're just on their way. And then the output water is nitric. So these got to be switched to nitric wastewater. And then since the output is sodium nitrate, these need to be set to that. Although it's near and far here. So that's the end of this belt. Where the next belt will have to come across and go down and take up that one. And all subsequent belts will have to kind of do the same thing, but we'll worry about that later. So those are doing the water purification, which they need to. These need to be set to rubite crystals. And they require a different type of acid. The nitric acid. So we need to hook this up in a different way. Kind of wasted a little bit of the acid, but whatever, we'll unhook it there. And then use this next slot. To hook up the acid. And we've got to drain the system. And nitric is right here. So that's hooked up. They have what they need. Let's get the water in here. And got to get them all lined up for the offshore pumps. Well, that's running. Filling up the purified water very quickly. I think we've got some other things here to set, although we could just set this to everything here. So if everything is less than, so that way we don't have to keep changing that every time. But we will have to change the filter on these to rubite. And we'll worry about getting all these things lined up with the bus when we're actually putting things on the bus. For now, it doesn't really matter. There's our output of rubite there. But kind of like what we did here, we're going to need to have a warehouse in here. And I don't really like it being down there because it kind of cramped everything. So let's put it up here instead. And put some logic on there. Let's say less than 10,000. And get this one set up for rubite. So we'll let that get filled up. I think the robots are mostly done here. It seems all in place. Okay, let's check it all. First, we'll just check this and take a look at the performance and see what it looks like. Because it doesn't take very long to fill up. Well, oh, are these facing the wrong directions? There we go. Well, it definitely helps having the more inserters. But the output isn't quite maxed out, probably because we need more inserters. Well, we might be able to add it fairly easily, actually. By just adding an extra row here. Like right here, if it would fit. So we would have that many spaces used up. So we certainly could make it fit. We'll need to move that around, but... well, it's kind of squished, but... it seems like it works. We can always smash these down right next to the tracks, too. which it might be worth it. Guess we gotta make sure all these are connected. With the wires. There we go. Okay, I think that's pretty good. We are kind of waiting on these to arrive so we can change the recipe. But I think that will help the inserter issues. That's the main problem there. I guess we could use unloaders, but that would change the design of the setup a little bit, and honestly, in many ways, make it bigger. So I kind of don't want to mess with that right now, but we have our crushed rubite now. So that's all going. And that's draining its fluid, so I guess they're all connected. Although these two sides do need to be connected because that's hooked up to nothing right now. So that one needs to go across. So it is the red wire. There we go. They're still enabled. But at least it's hooked up correctly now. How are we doing with our fluids? Well, we're almost maxed out on slurry here, which means that the way of dumping it should hopefully turn on. But I think we're going to need to hook up another one in order to check and see how it works. Because at least so far, it worked. We had some changes to do, but it seems to be pretty good. So let's make the robots extremely busy again. And unhook all of these things. So I guess it needs to be pretty much right down to the line, I think, in order to make this fit, which is going to be kind of annoying when it comes to moving the belts around. But we'll see what we can do. And when the robots are right here, things go very fast. Look at that. Okay, this is mostly set, so let's just switch this over before I forget. And let's make our third iteration of this. And I guess grab the tracks again to try to get it lined up perfectly. But we want everything here. Okay, and we get it lined up there. Hopefully it works. It looks like it does. It's smashed in there right on the edge again, but that's how it was before, so I think we finally have something that can be repeated. Hopefully we've got all the bugs worked out. Did some robots crash? Yeah, I guess so. So right there. Let's help the robots again by expanding their network early so they can get down here as quickly as possible. Well, we just got a steel request here, so we're starting to use resources again, which is fine, but something we want to make sure of. Oh yeah, I pulled the radar out here, or maybe disconnected the power. But one thing we want to make sure of is that the resources are getting to where they need to go while we're messing around with things. I do remember picking up a radar, so let's put another one in here somewhere where it makes sense. Maybe like right here. Okay. But we're going to start consuming resources soon. You see we're going down on iron, which is going to start using up what we've got here. And part of the plan of building in place like this is that we won't have to just tear everything out. So hopefully we can just connect these resources as we create them back into the system, and then it should create a desirable result here. So if we push this up, and put that in there. That gets connected again. Gotta make sure to connect all these the correct directions. Still waiting on modules, but we can get all this set up anyway. Crotinium. It's a lot easier now with this combinator. It all gets set. Don't have to squint at is that crotinium or is that crushed stone. Those are set to everything now, so those are set. Let's do crotinium. And then we gotta set it to the right resources, which is the light green geode. And that one is crotinium chunks. And these are crotinium crystals. Then we gotta get all these storage chests set up. That one needs to be set to light green. And what kind of acids are we needing? Hydrochloric. And this is creating chloric wastewater. So we set that to chloric. Then these need to be set to salt. Let's see, we can get rid of this belt here, because it doesn't apply. It actually only shifts right here. Why is there no salt at all on that line? I think it's being stored pretty far away, but it should be. So it looks like it got disconnected somewhere. Yay. Figuring out where that happened. Maybe it doesn't matter, because these are holding 10,000, and presumably when it goes above 10,000 it electrolyzes it to create chlorine here. Kind of want to go over there just to double check how it's set up. Could just be oversight on my part, but why isn't it hooked up to a wire? Because if we're overloaded on salt, what happens? Could just be I never hooked it up. And it just hasn't mattered because salt is relatively rare. So electrolyzing the salt gives us sodium and chlorine. Looks like the sodium gets dumped into here and turned into sodium hydroxide. And it has to have at least 10,000. Whereas hydrochloric acid, it always runs. So that makes sense. But it is a bit of an oversight to not have this wire here. Was the reason just because it was so far away? Well, but it keeps going up here. So it's definitely sent for quite a ways. So it seems like the intent was this was hooked up. But it's coming up to here. Oh, because there's hydro plants here. Well, it wouldn't be that much further just to send it down to the proper location here. So we might as well. Although we do have signal transmitters and whatnot at this point, but it's not going to be that much of a deal to just send it along these poles right here and just skip that one so the color stays true. There we go. So it should be connected all the way down here. And it is. Certainly any of the newer, longer wire transmissions, I would want to use the signal transmitters for that, but that's pretty short because it was already wired up, so it didn't take that much more effort to hook it up, so might as well. But those are now properly hooked up. Looks like most of the bots got here. And that other setup is running, but it's not hooked up. Because it's just maxed out on crushed stone. That actually makes a lot of sense. So we kind of want to leave these hooked up for now. At least on this side. So production can continue. Although, if it was not hooked up, it would certainly make the bot's job a lot easier. But that said, I'm looking at that we're completely out of iron ore. And we're going to get maxed out on the other resource types if we don't have this hooked up. So, to try to test the factory, we kind of want to let the logic stay true. So, we should let it run as it wants to. I'm assuming it's just short on, yeah, the sapphirite. Also looks like running out of space for the gems, too. But that's not actually going to be hooked up to anything, so I don't want to hook those up anymore. Okay. Gotta hook up water yet again. So those are hooked up. Water is available. So we need to get the hydrochloric acid in here this time, which is this third pipe. And it's this one. So there we go, that's sent in. It made it in. And we can probably just copy this, because it's not going to be any different. Hopefully this works. Well, one interesting thing about the crotinium is that it's just coming off of this mine, which has a limited production. So because of that, testing it is going to be a little different. So set to crotinium. Because we're probably actually going to need to make a mine somewhere to keep up with this. Because that's a pretty small mine to expect 4 belts of crotinium out of. And because of the position, it's kind of tricky, so we'll do it the messy way. Coming in through here. With logic set up. Except, don't hook up quite yet. So we wanted to build a nice buffer first. And actually, because of that, we should probably set this really high. To like 50,000. Just so the mine isn't hard locked to the speed of the bus. It's nice to see various parts of this running, because they are hooked up in part. So it's just doing what it's doing. Notice slag slurry never seems to really max out. I wonder if that's because we're using it at the rate we're creating it, or it's being dumped on something. You see one potential use of this as an output was for the landfill. So that's definitely a reason why we'd want to have 6 full belts coming in here, because it takes a lot of resources to make landfill. Okay, I think we're ready to test this in part. Let's see how this new setup works. See if we get our 4 full belts, or close to it anyway. Well, kinda. It's certainly using the 4 belts, so yeah, it's pretty close. Can only get so much when it comes to belt compression, so that seems pretty good. Okay, we'll hook it up. Well, it's certainly going. And slag slurry is definitely getting maxed out now. And it looks like it's working correctly. That it's getting pumped out of here when this gets too high. And then presumably it's being turned into, yeah, ore. So it seems like it's dumping it properly, which is what we want to see. And crystal slurry is building up slowly. It's interesting how this one lined up perfectly this time, but that's good to see. We gotta get our resources hooked up. Lots of unnecessary undergrounds in here. Let's see, why did this shut down? Caloric wastewater is filled. Because it's hooked up to the mineralized water output. So this is one of those situations where it needs to connect to the bottom. And the mineralized water just needs to skip on by. Well, actually, the mineralized water can kind of come down to the bottom here temporarily if it needs to. It'll be a little weird, but we can just kind of cross along here and kind of grab onto that water there. Whoops, and these need to be near and fars. But I think it does it, and then the mineralized can just kind of go across there. So I think that's pretty good. Hopefully the resources are going to where they need to and it's not all getting messed up. I don't know, seems to be working. And that's the end of this episode. On the next one, we are going to finish up with our Tier 3 ore processing setup. Thanks for watching. I'll see you later.